Brand is the space you take in someone's head. So what you're trying to do is become the thing that someone thinks about when they talk about your type of product. If you get inside that pigeonhole in someone's head, you win. Then it's the amount of heads that you can get into that pigeonhole in. That's when you've really cracked it in brand.
Hello, my name's Nathan Brake. I'm the creative director of VidMedia, a creative contents agency. It's my privilege to welcome you to Legacy Conversations. This channel exists to share the journeys of incredibly successful individuals, to pass on the lessons that they've learned, the mindsets that they've adopted, and the disciplines that they've developed in order to get to where they are today. My hope is that in sharing these journeys, we can learn from them and apply these same principles to our own growth in order to quicken it, so that we too can create lasting legacies. Today I'm speaking with Simon Howie, the Scottish butcher. Simon started life out on the family farm, and leaving school at an early age, he set up his own butchers, and that business has not stopped growing. Alongside setting that very successful business up, Simon's been involved in setting up multiple other businesses, also very successful. And it's very impressive, Simon's ability to understand people and bring on board the right kind of people in order to generate that success. Simon's also got a tremendous knowledge on brand and how important that is for his customers. So there's lots in here. As always, enjoy. Simon, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for your time and letting me come and meet you in your lovely office.
Pleasure, nice to see you.
So if we could start by just sharing a wee bit about where you grew up and what life was like for you growing up.
Yeah, I had a very nice upbringing. Mum and Dad were hard-working people. Dad had a dairy farm where he milked 95 cows every day, twice a day. And back in the days when there was no automatic gizmos to help, Mum was a nursing sister in the hospital, and so they were hard-working people. I have two brothers, an older brother and a younger brother. Close ages, there's only about 4 years between all three of us, and we had a very nice upbringing on a small dairy farm in rural Perthshire in the 70s.
Wow, that sounds quite unique.
It was a nice time to be young, pre-mobile phones, and we could run around the village and on our bikes and do whatever we wanted. We had a very liberal upbringing. It was nice.
Wow, brilliant. And what values were instilled in you by your mum and dad?
Oh, nothing consciously. There was no finger wagging or lecturing going on, but we turned out to be people who seemed to see things from other people's perspectives. We understand there are people less fortunate than us. I'm going to use hard work, but it wasn't instilled in us to be hardworking. We just saw people who were, and we saw the fun in working. The stuff that Dad did on the farm was boys' own stuff, out in tractors and helping feed the cattle and feed the sheep and run around on the farm was great. It was a great place to be. It was a big playground rather than as such working. And by the time we were in our early teens, I think we were doing a man's job a lot of the time, helping Dad at nights and at the weekends. So I think we were a good help to him, and it was nice to be valued. He was a very complimentary and easy guy to be around, and he loved the company of his sons. So did Mum. So that way we didn't think it was a chore or that we should be doing something else. So it was great. So values: have fun, be decent people, speak well. Manners were a big thing. I would say they would be the thing that if there was any finger wagging, it would be about please and thank yous and a few other things. Yeah.
And was there the thought that you kind of boys would take on the farm from your mum and dad?
Again, not discussed, but the inference was there that the farm was what it was, and it was a decent asset, and you like farming, so one of us will go into that, maybe two of us will go into the farming side of life, and that became the case. The farm is still in the family to this date. Yeah.
Wow, that's brilliant. And your dad encouraged you to go and work in a local butcher's. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that was, and what was that experience like for you?
Well, I was in first year at the secondary school and had suggested to him that I would like a job, a Saturday job to earn some money, and he was very friendly with the Rattray family, four brothers, who were very big in the agricultural community. One of whom, the eldest brother, Dick Rattray, had a very good butcher shop in High Street in Perth. So my dad went in when he was at the market on Friday and spoke to Dick Rattray, and he said, send him in tomorrow, he can come in and work in the shop. So I got a great training there, working for Dick Rattray, working every Saturday, some occasionally after school, but mainly at the weekends and then the summer holidays. And he was a war veteran. He felt like an old guy to me, but he was mid-50s when I joined him, which is younger than I am now. So he had a great way with him. So I can remember standing around the tables there was 15 of us worked in the shop. It was a good going butcher shop. And you got all aspects of the butchery trade to do, from all the back shop work to the front shop work, and serving customers and delivering orders and washing the van and everything that went on to make that shop tick is what we did. So it was a great training for me, and I stayed on there after I left school and became an apprentice butcher in that shop.
And did your love of butchery kind of stem from there? Did you have that prior to that experience?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that if I had gone to a joinery business, I probably would have ended up as a joiner or a carpenter. I just got to know the people, and I think I became pretty useful to them. And when you're wanted and needed, it's quite an easy thing to continue that on. I'm sure that if I'd been the eldest brother and I'd stayed at home on the farm and worked, and my younger brother had gone to be a butcher, it would have been the other way around today. But I'm here sitting as the butcher now because of that.
Oh, very cool. And in the same way that your dad kind of helped you get your first job, was that something that you consciously wanted to do for your own children and be like, right, let's get out to work? What could you do?
Yeah, I think my wife and I, Karen and I, are much more into instilling things into our children than perhaps our parents were with us. They just let us live a life, whereas we were much more conscious of telling them what we thought was right and what wasn't. So we probably did talk a lot to our children about the enjoyment and the reward you can get from hard work. So yeah, I encouraged my son Ross to get himself into work, and our daughter Lynn as well. So they're all very hard-working people.
And did you have any kind of aspirations as a schoolboy, kind of big dreams, hopes, desires that you wanted to go off and do?
Yeah, I think back to my time at that age, and I want to say yes. I thought, I've got a great idea, or I would like to be here or there. But at the time, I think, if I'm being honest, it was no, I want to have a good job, I want to have some fun, have some good friends, I want to have some money in my pocket. But it was never about, big factories and Ferraris and whatever else people aspire to these days. It was always about, I think most people want to be shoulder to shoulder with their peers, or the ones that they think are the most successful at that time. I don't think I was looking in the newspapers or on the television thinking I want to be him or her, but definitely was keen to get on. I don't want to paint too rosy a picture of farming life in Scotland in the 70s. It was hard, and the most farms had nice big overdrafts in those days because they were all post-war businesses that were expanding. So as soon as they borrowed some money from the banks and the interest rates rose, it was very, very difficult to get out of borrowing. So Dad spent a lot of his life repaying borrowings to the bank, and watching him toil with that and work very, very hard, and an awful lot of the value that he created leaking out of the system was something I was keen not to replicate. So I've always been quite adverse to borrowing and debt, perhaps too much so, if I'm honest. There are times when I look back into the 90s and into the early 2000s when things were going good for me, I could perhaps have leveraged up and raised the bar a bit, but I was never very keen on debt.
When you left school, you looked into buying your own shop and making your own butcher. Where did that aspiration come from, as opposed to just being like, right, I've got this good job in this place, I can just kind of sustain this and work here and live that?
I hope I can answer the question succinctly. I left school at 17 and I went to be an apprentice in that shop that I spoke about in Rattray the Butchers. Unfortunately, Mr. Rattray died when I was 19 at an early age, in his early 60s, and I decided at that point that I thought I was able to go on my own. So there was a very small shop in the village here that my mother had bought 10 years earlier, an old cooperative shop, and she bought that for £2,500. It was a very small shop, and I said, well, I'll take that and I'll set up camp there and start selling meat, and that's what I did when I was 19.
Wow.
1986.
And what did you learn about growing a business at that stage?
Well, remember, it was tiny. I was in the shop on my own. I had no staff. The customers in the village were, very nice to me and supported me very, very well, to the point where I had to very quickly take on staff to help me in the business. So I learned about employing people, the difficulties that come with that, especially in those days. And out in a rural area, the choice of staff was more limited because there are less people in the community who can do what I needed to be done. Everything was 10 miles away. The space was cramped. The shop got busy. We didn't have enough space. We had all the growing pains and it's never really changed. And it hasn't really changed in 36 years. We could still do with more space today. We're always looking for really good people. It doesn't change. There are challenges with some of our colleagues, and we have, quite simply an amazing bunch of people, but you get the odd one where we have to help them go and be successful somewhere else. But that was the same in those early days. Get up sharp in the morning, get going, be organised, be straightforward, don't waffle, pay your bills on time, collect your cash. The simple things about business. And you have to sell yourself. When the shop started to become busy, the only real expansion I could get after it hit a certain level was to go and knock on the door of hotels and restaurants and say, can we supply you with meat? So we became a wholesale supplier into the restaurant trade. And that started with one hotel in Auchterarder, and 2 and 3 and 5 and 10, and that just mushrooms as time goes on, as the chefs move along. But that's very, very challenging as well when you've got lots of constraints, cash constraints, people constraints, space constraints. It's challenging, but startups are, if you said to me, what are you good at? I would say startups are my thing, much better than running a business. I'm better at getting it off the ground.
Oh, wow. Why do you think that is?
I think it's seriously challenging. It really holds your feet to the fire. I think when it's going at a certain level and business is flying, sometimes it's just, not going to say too easy, but becomes repetitive. Whereas in the early stages, you're knocking down brick walls regularly, and quite simply, you don't know what's at the other side of that wall each time, and that's quite exciting.
That sounds exciting. Wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And challenging.
Yeah, it can be. I think that, a healthy dose of ignorance is sometimes a great thing. You start these things not knowing what's going to come your way, and you just, by the time you have to deal with it, you have no option but to deal with it. And that's certainly helpful. Youthful ignorance is quite a powerful thing.
Wow. And as you were expanding, was there like kind of set models of things or levels that you wanted to attain and be like, right, next I want to work on that, next I want to get to here? How did the kind of growth develop?
Well, my business journey has been daisy chaining from one thing to another. So you push on. For me, with the shops, I realised very early on in my small Dunning shop that this was not going to be it for me. I just didn't want to be standing here 20 years later doing the same thing. So I bought another set of premises in the next village along Auchterarder, and then I bought one up in a village north of Perth at Dunkeld. So within 3-4 years' time, we had 3 shops with 3 managers and supplying hotels and restaurants around there. So the model was good village town shop supplying some of the local hotels and restaurants round about it. And that became a model I thought I could roll out until I realised that I couldn't, because getting the kind of calibre of people you need to run these operations autonomously was challenging. And that doesn't mean to say no one could do it like I could, but they were working remotely. They weren't their businesses, they were mine. So there were things that I could do that it wasn't reasonable to expect them to be able to do. So that's how the growth of the meat business was going. And during that period of fitting out my new shops, I was buying wall cladding and shop fitting materials, because we did a lot of the fit out works ourselves, myself working at nights and weekends with tradesmen to keep the cost down of renovating these shops. And there was some quite big renovations, and that again daisy chains into another element of my life later on. But as I was doing that, I stumbled upon a guy at a factory who was selling a product called wet wall, or a product that became wet wall later on, and it was a laminate faced board for white clean surfaces for shops. And he said, I think we could do this ourselves. And I said, what do you mean we? He said, well, if you've got some money, I've got the expertise, we could set up and we could make this product. And that became the start of Shore Laminates. So we rented a small factory in Perth, and we started to make wall panelling. Bought some second-hand machinery. It was really just the same as the meat business. It was a very poor, small factory, and we got started with a small bunch of people making panels with no customers and knocking on doors, dealing with all the startup things that go with that business, and that went on to some great heights over the next 25 years through bringing in very good people, product development, getting to know your customers well, and being a bit of a chameleon as a business and changing as times went on. And again, through that, other things happened as well. So again, there was no sort of serious thought given to any of it. There were opportunities there, and we grabbed a hold of them and tried our best.
And how do you develop the ability to see that as a good opportunity, worth my time, I can see value in that, and then being able to go with it?
Sometimes you tell yourself what you want to hear, and a lot of the time any new opportunity is relative to the risk as well. It's not just the prize, it's what happens if it goes wrong. So most of the time my startups were tiny, and therefore if I got 6 months into it or a year and decided it was a bad idea, then pulling out of it wouldn't have been a disaster in any of the cases. So that's an important part of any decision about something new, is what happens if it goes wrong. And I think most sensible businessmen would say to you, I always had a back door, or if I had to stop it, it wouldn't have been catastrophic. So the laminates idea was talked up by this chap, and he was right. It was a great opportunity. It doesn't mean to say that we were going to make a success of it, because we could have made too many mistakes. And so we got started, and it was really difficult. We nearly ran out of cash, and I had been left. Unfortunately, my mum died very young, and she left my brothers and I £23,000 each. So I put mine into this business, to the laminate business, and borrowed £60,000 from the bank, which was really quite a big number for me at that time, 60 grand in 1991. And we ran out of cash within about 6 months. So that was challenging. But some good things happened. New customers came on. We got through it. Some support from some of the suppliers, and within a few years it was making a very, very good margin. So it was a good business.
Wow, brilliant. That sounds pretty scary.
Yeah. Scary is not the word. At the time, I didn't feel afraid. I felt perhaps a little bit disappointed in myself that I'd allowed myself to potentially squander the money that my mother left me. There was face involved as well. Potentially here I'd tried something, not so much for the outside world, but for my family to them see me struggling would be difficult for them. So I'm putting pressure on them inadvertently. So that was probably more difficult than anything. But it wasn't. We weren't lying on the ground weeping our eyes out. It was just a challenge, and we had to get on with it.
Wow. And was there any kind of nerves about stepping into something totally different from butchery, like not your comfort zone? How do you kind of manage that? It
was excitement more than nerves. I cannot think of ever being nervous and stressed about it. I always just felt the excitement of it, and still do to this day. Any big new project to me is exciting, especially if someone says, actually one person did say at the start of the laminate business that he will fail at that. He'd said it to someone who told me that won't go well, and that for me was a help. You need something, a rod up your back to make sure you don't prove them correct, if prove them right. So no, never nerves, just excitement. Seriously.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. That's good fuel. So in 2002, a fridge engineer told you that CFC gases were going to be banned. Could you share the kind of context to how this conversation came about, and then what was your mindset to that, and how did you then configure what you went on to do?
Well, so the chap's name was John Gordon, and then where I'm sitting here right now, if I look to my left, there's a door over there, and he came walking along towards the office, and we were chatting. A lovely man, unfortunately no longer here, and he said to me, I've recharged a lot of the refrigeration units in the factory. What are you thinking about doing now that they're banning CFCs? And I said, I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. He said, well, the gases that are in refrigeration are chlorofluorocarbons, and they are becoming banned because they're affecting the ozone layer. When they leak, they're damaging the world. And I said, I really haven't thought about it. He said, well, we're going to have to put drop-in gases, and he told me what they were going to have to do. And then coincidentally on the Sunday I was reading the newspapers, and there was an image of the Canary Wharf Tower 3/4 full, and that was them showing you how many domestic refrigerators per year in the UK would not be able to go to landfill or to car crushers from that point onwards. In other words, that volume of fridges and freezers would have to be recycled, and there was nothing in the UK to do that. So it got me thinking about it, and I wouldn't be Google searching at that time. So whatever happened, I managed to find a company in Austria who had a process for processing fridges, and so I went out to Munich, actually in Germany, and met the chap, and he took me in his Passat car around a few factories that had this very complex combine harvester, if you like, that sat in one place, and you fed fridges in one side, and out came all the component parts, completely separated. But crucially, it took the foam. It was the CFC gases weren't just in the refrigerant, in the compressor. They were actually in the blown foam, the insulation. So this was able to do is take the blown foam, grind it into a powder, and then heat it and allow the gas to escape from the molecules of the insulation, and then capture the gas, liquefy it, and then put it into bottles that could then go away for high temperature incineration, so no effect on the ozone layer. And this was a revelation for me, walking these factories in Germany and seeing this happening. So I came back and I said to the council locally, look, I'll buy this machine, you give me the contract. And they said, no, we have got dozens of people saying, give me the contract and we'll buy a machine. So I realised what I had to do was buy the machine. So what I did was I gave them a deposit of £100,000, which was what I had at the time, and I got obviously a receipt for that, and there was a long length of documentation between myself and the company called Erdwick. And I went with this document and signed up 29 out of the 32 councils in Scotland into 3 to 5 year contracts to take all the fridges from all the councils. And when I say I did it, I had a very, very clever and capable chap who was with me, Malcolm Todd. We sat in a porta cabin phoning the councils up, got to know them all by name, had a map up on the wall with all the councils, and he worked his way around all these. Between he and I, we got cracking with that. I worked more towards on the building of the factory in Perth. So I had a site in Perth that was next to the laminate business, which I'd bought, and a very, very capable and great friend, John Blackwell, who had come from Scottish and Southern Energy to work with me, and he project managed the building of that. So he was doing the dirty hands side of constructing a building and putting in the new machinery. Malcolm was working hard at getting the fridges in. So, and I was essentially working between them both, supporting where I could, running the laminate business and running the butchery business. So it was a busy, busy time. The porta cabin was sitting on the side of the butcher factory, and my kids will remember going up and doing colouring in on the whiteboard at that time. It was that kind of era. So these guys were exceptional, and without them it would have been nothing like the success it was. It might not have even got off the ground. But the amazing cash flow story with that is that fridges at that time, the councils were paying £20 for you to take a fridge from them, and we were picking them up in truckloads of 200 at a time. So £4,000 per truckload was getting paid for each, and we were bringing 6 truckloads a day into the site before we had the machine built. In fact, it hadn't even been paid for. It was still in construction in Germany coming to us. So think about, I get my facts right, 2002, the deposit's given in May, and we start processing fridges in the factory in December. So we went from a greenfield site to a completely finished and constructed building and machine within the matter of about 8 months. And but what happened during that time is that the fridges were coming at such a lick towards us, we had to lease 3 aircraft hangars and fill them full of these fridges with the consent of SEPA to do that. But the brilliant thing was that what they brought with them was £4,000 every truckload. So by the time we switched the machine on in the December, we had paid the machine in full at 1.8 million and had £600,000 in the bank before we switched it on. So it was quite the opposite of what my dad was doing on the farm. It was a cash flow wizard. And I mean that things changed. The more of these plants that were built throughout the UK, the prices started to drop. But what happened was the recycle it, so the metal, the plastic, the foam, and all the things that came out at the end of it had a value in itself. So a fridge went in it brought you a £20 note, and then it gave you £6 when it went through the machine, in the value of the copper, aluminium, steel, and all the bits and pieces. So it was a great business, and within 3 years it was knocking out £3 million a year profit. So it was a great look for, in my world that was unheard of. I thought if I get a business to make £100,000 a year, I would be doing really well. So it was a great time, and something that will be difficult ever to repeat again. The fun of it, the novelty of it, and in every respect it was novel to everyone, not just me. The people that we got to meet and the things that happened were fantastic. So as I said, in every one of my businesses, any of my stories, there are always 2 or 3 people without whom it would never have been successful. I would never have managed it without them. The meat business has half a dozen people. One in particular who came to me, my business partner Gary Conacher, came to me in 1999, and between he and I together, we've recruited people who are amazing at what they do. They can do things that he and I can't do, but he's the most talented man in the meat industry, and he's my business partner, and that's why it's an exceptional business today.
So would you say that people are your most valuable resource?
Yeah, I mean, you can't say no to that, can you? Because anybody listening to that is going to say you nutter. But yeah, I mean, without a doubt, there's been some good ideas along the way, but they would never have come to anything without exceptionally good people. I don't think there's no such thing as a no to that. Maybe if you had found a way to make a new titanium knee that can do something that no other knee can do, you can have a great business without great people. But no, it's without a doubt, it's been the people that I've brought on board with me they've stretched me, challenged me, sometimes made me cry, I can tell you. But the really good ones have been fantastic for me. It wouldn't be any fun without them. I'd be working too hard and wouldn't be able to do the things that they can do anyway.
How do you suss out who's going to be a good person, a good fit for the business?
Oh, that's the hard. I always say that when it's actually one of my sort of, people yawn at every interview that I do with someone. My colleagues will say, he's going to say it again, is the hardest part of my job. Nothing is more difficult than recruitment. Somebody comes in, they look well, you sit down, within 10 minutes you can just see across them, you think this is no good, he or she is going to be hopeless. Others come in, you don't think they're right for you, and within half an hour you think, yeah, this could work. The reality is you never really know until about 3 months, unless they're really bad or really good. You never know for about 3 months after a start whether they're going to be successful or not. But we don't take on as many Lulus as we used to. We're better at interviewing now. We're more concise. We've got people in the business who've got a better feel for it than me sometimes. I was a bit of a sucker for a good egg. If somebody was a decent guy and he sounded like he was going to put a shift in, you think, he could be good. And then you find that his level of competency wasn't good enough. Nice guy, just not capable. Others you get, he could be perhaps a bit slovenly, and so they come in and they are capable, but there's things about their game that you just can't put up with. They're not doing things the way that I would like them to be done. So unless they're doing something really exceptional, it doesn't work. You're as well to say, look, this isn't for you. Let's call it a day. But it is the most difficult part of the job. You build empires around these folk who just turn up, stuck their head down, get on with things. You can't do it without them.
And how does it feel when you invest a lot in someone and see them kind of grow and flourish, and then they say, I've got a better opportunity somewhere else?
It's a gut punch. It's exactly the same as me saying to them, you know what, I've decided I'm going to get someone to come and do your job. And they would look as if to say, I've done a brilliant job, we're getting on well, no one's rocking the boat, and you want me to leave. Well, that's the same feeling when a really good person says, I'm off. I don't know who's going to be listening to this, but and one or two that may have been here over the years might think this is really rude, but we haven't lost that many that I would want to come back. And I will caveat that and say there are some we would want to come back. It's you. But not many I can think of I'd want to come back. Not because I feel personally hurt by the fact that they left, but the really good ones, we find a way of making sure they don't leave.
That's good.
Yeah.
And with kind of expanding in different areas, different businesses, do you ever think or hear of other businesses that say, no, it's best to focus on just one thing and grow that and do that well, versus all the different varieties of businesses and growing them?
It's a good question, and I think about it often. And I think the answer to that is, and you can ask this to 50 business people, and if they know their own mind, I think the answer here is not just my view. I think the answer is, well, it is my view, is it depends on your style and the way you're made and the way that you like to do things. I was never going to be the biggest butcher in the world and stick completely to the meat industry. My eyes were all over the place, seeing people in different industries doing things, wondering why that was happening. I had an inquisitive mind. I like engineering. I like building things. I don't just like standing at a table cutting meat up or putting it in a pack or speaking to people about meat. I really do like it, but it's not all that I like. So it would not, for me, I don't think would have been enough. And I think the answer is that the meat business today is much, much smaller than it would be had I said I'm only going to do that, because inevitably I would have been spending more time doing it. You don't know, that's the truth. There are other people who have built, and you start to name them: Tunnocks, Cadbury's, massive food industry giants, the Walkers of the shortbread fame, the bars of the drinks, Iron Brew, a number of these iconic, fantastic, big Scottish brands that are world leaders in their sector. They could go into any country with what they have, and the customers would like what they do. And they're not alone. There are another dozen like them in Scotland. And that's just in the food industry. And they would never have been these businesses that they are today had they been house building, laminate fabrication, recycling, property management, and it would never have worked for them. And they'd built these fantastic, great big silos that are much bigger than what I have. My base, I think, is wider, but it's not better, it's not bigger, it's just different.
And is it the same principles that you apply in terms of how you apply starting up a business? Is it the same principles in each, or is it just vastly different?
100% the same. You could take what I did in the meat business and take it to starting a new house building business. People, watch your cash, get the product right, speak to the customers properly, don't let bad habits creep into the business, get up, know your facts, all the things that you should know. I mean, you can take all these things and put them into, you could start a medical services business tomorrow with the same principles as you would, in any of the businesses that I've done. I find that if I stick to that, it works well. In fact, when I haven't stuck to it, things have gone badly. I started building some houses in the 90s. When I say I was a house builder, we built houses, but we weren't building for ourselves, so we were really a housing contractor. So we had all the skills, the people that you would need to build a very nice family home, and we could build them well, but we didn't make any money because the model was wrong. We had good, expensive people doing a decent job, buying all the same materials as the other house builders were, not probably paying much more for them, but we didn't have the developer's margin. We were a contractor, so we just had a contractor's margin, rather than somebody who bought a piece of land, spent X amount of £100,000 building a house, and then sold it with a developer's margin. That's the way to make money in the house building job. And by the time that it was crazy, and with hindsight, it was so stupid not to have done that. I had the cash at that point. I bought a few sites and developed them and sold them, but it just seemed to be that we fell into the rut of people said, "Can you build me a house?" "Yep, we could do that for you." It was a mistake. So that we did quite a number of them and then stopped, licked our wounds and left it, having lost a few quid doing it. So that was just before I started the recycling business, and it was very painful, really difficult, because not the money, losing the cash that we did, it was, I think I can tell you, it was about £160,000 I lost doing it. And in 1998, 99, that was a lot. But it didn't rock the boat. It was the fact that I put so much effort and energy into it. That was the bit that I really grudged. I could have been doing more in the meat business, more in the laminate business, or just going for a walk and doing nothing. But I was out slogging my guts off, trying to get that business to become successful, and it was wrong. So that was hard to take. And so I often say that when the recycling opportunity came along, I was pretty focused. I was, if it had gone wrong, I think I'd have lost a hell of a confidence in the fact that 2 businesses in close succession hadn't worked. That wouldn't have been good. And so thankfully it steeled me on. I wasn't for messing with when I started the recycling business. I needed that to go well, and nothing was getting in the way of that.
So is there some elements that you would take a failure and turn it into a positive to be able to double down and get that focus?
Yeah, I think that's what happened there. It wasn't conscious, but subconsciously, when I saw the opportunity in the recycling business and I went out to Germany, and I was on my own, travelling alone, writing my notes, seeing things, moving around with people who didn't know me and I didn't know them. It was anonymity. You could be somebody standing in the corner watching things happening. That was a very exciting time. I can think of sitting in Stuttgart in the airport and contacting my wife back at home to say, I've seen something that I think if I can get this in and get going, I know this works because I've just stood in a factory watching it work. And these people are seriously good operators, and I know what it costs to buy the machine. I have a site that I could put it on. There is a pile of fridges the size, 3/4 the size of Canary Wharf Tower, that need to be processed. I need to get this to happen really soon. And that, my father had died in January, and I went to Germany in the spring of that year, as I said, or Austria and Germany. And as I said, I wasn't going to let anything get in the way of that being successful, and that was a game changer for me in my business career. Lots of things in the meat trade were game changers. There's things that this business that I have, in the food trade, certain things happened over the last 35 years that really helped step it up a gear. Similarly with the laminate business, there were things that happened there that took it away from being a backstreet laminate fabrication shop to a brand that was in B&Q and Homebase and a number of these things, and they were game changers. But if you take each one of them had its own story that made it a better business than it was. But over the whole piece, the recycling thing, when it started, the cash injection into our bubble was so significant that it took us away from having the fear of and having to have discussions with banks. We just became independent. It was a bit like growing up. You got the person who'd very successfully lived at home with his parents all of a sudden got himself a job, and he was getting very, very well paid, so he could have the best car and the best shoes. And that's where we got to with that. And from that, we were able to, money. The saying of money makes money, and I don't want that to sound arrogant, but you just got out of the doodah into the good stuff at that point.
That's brilliant. There's so much in that. Thank you. And with juggling so many things all at once, as well as being a husband and a father, how do you manage your time and make sure you're not kind of using too much here or too much there or not enough there?
I don't know. I think you listen to the mood music amongst your colleagues, who needs support, who doesn't. I try not to be operational if I can. I'm not somebody who my phone's not ringing every 5 minutes. The people who work in the businesses run the business. I get involved in most of the money that's spent in the business. So if we're buying something big, or if we're putting an extension on a factory, or if we're buying a new industrial unit, I would always be in the mix with that. But operationally, my colleagues do all the clever stuff. I don't serve the customers, I don't speak to the customers, I don't speak to the suppliers until I do. And all of a sudden I am speaking to a supplier about a certain thing or a customer. But generally speaking, my colleagues are far better at it and know the detail much more than I do. So I kind of go where I want to go, depending on what I think I need to get involved in. And a lot of that is one-to-one time with my colleagues, asking them what's going on. Why are things as they are? What's worrying you? What's going on? There's a hell of a lot of my week is wandering about, getting a flavour for things. And then I'll have lists that I need to get on with, and I need my doors shut and people need to leave me alone for an afternoon while I get on with something. But I'm still, highly ambitious, but not to the point where I just want to be the busiest guy in the room. I want to be productive with my time. I value it to the extent that I now know that, working every night till 9 o'clock isn't, you're not going to get any brownie points for that. If you have to do an odd late shift, then fine, get on with it and don't complain about it. But it's selfish now for me to be saying to my family, I won't be home in the evenings, or I'll be away early morning every day, or I'll be staying away for 3 nights down south seeing something or doing something. I don't need to do that, so I need to fill my time usefully and productively, in the sense that I can move the businesses on. But there isn't any need for me to try and prove that I'm the hardest working one in the group. I don't feel the need to do that.
What role do you think your family's played in your success?
Huge, absolutely huge. I mean, the biggest decision in my life I got right, and got together with Karen. She was in her early 20s, I was just on 20, and we got married when I was 22. Karen was 24, and we've had 2 brilliant kids, and they've given us 6 brilliant grandchildren. So, we live in walking distance from each other. We live in rural Perthshire. They're hardworking. They like the lifestyle that we have. It's pretty straightforward stuff, hanging about with each other, having some food, talking, nothing grand. It's really just a good way of life. They like all the people that we work with as well. That, our colleagues at work all know the children as friends, and they've known them since they were small. They now have that. It's not unusual for me to have at least 1 or 2 of the grandkids crawling about the office and walking about, and it just softens the whole thing up. And it's not meant as some kind of tool. It just is what it is. It's good family life. I run about. As I said, I'm not hardworking, anything like as hardworking as I used to be, and that's the joy. And one of the paybacks, because the old expression, you can only eat one dinner. Once you've got enough cash to have a nice life, why don't you just pack it all in and just do nothing? Well, that would be a really bad idea for me. But what it does give you the ability to do is dip in and dip out. Go out in the Kawasaki truck and run around the farm with the grandkids, and go up the hill and check the sheep or look at the cattle, and take one of them out. Last night I was adamant that young Mitchell had to go out in the Manitou forklift to check the sheep. No, we'll just take the truck. No, Grandad, we'll take the Manitou. So I do what I'm told, and off we go and do that. And life's good. Never be better.
That's really wonderful to hear.
Yes,
really,
it's very good.
Very good. So you've said that brand is really important in building a business. Why is that?
Well, there's a lot of businesses out there that haven't built brands, and they've done really big things. The biggest businesses in the meat industry and the construction industry don't have brands. They make things for other people who put their name on it. The biggest brand in the UK now is Tesco Finest, or Sainsbury's Taste the Difference, or Volvo, or BMW. And there are people who supply these companies whose names are not known, but they're £1 billion companies. So there's brand and there's non-brand. And as I said, I just want to be clear that I understand that non-brand can work, but you have to be really slick. You have to get to a critical mass. You've got to be of a size, because what brand brings you is, it's the rock that you go and sit on when things get tough. You build a brand, you invest in it, you spend money on it when you could choose not to. There's sometimes we do things with brand and you don't immediately see any impact from that spend. But then something happens and things get tough, and people gravitate towards brand. It's the known thing, and you know. So what is brand? Brand is the space you take in someone's head. So what you're trying to do is become the thing that someone thinks about when they talk about your type of product. I say shoes, you say such and such, and I may say something else. If you get inside that pigeonhole in someone's head, you win. Then it's the amount of heads that you can get into that pigeonhole in. That's when you've really cracked it in brand. And Dyson would be an example of one who took Hoover's place in that pigeonhole. There are not many businesses can do that. So I've always understood that, and what made Shore Laminates the success it was is that my business partner there, Michael Elwin, was very brand focused. So he took what was a fabrication private label type business, making products for other people to put in their buildings, to saying, no, you should put wet wall or splash wall or storm wall into your factory or into your home. And then he streamed that down through different channels into the sheds, so B&Q, Homebase and Wix, or private washroom businesses, the local bathroom studios. So they had different brands for different parts of the market, basically all selling the same product. And that brand then took on a life of its own, and brand sells when you're sleeping. That's what it does. It works for you when you're dozing off. And that's what I've focused on a lot, and that's really what's differentiated all our businesses all the way along, is that we've never been happy just making stuff for people. We want it to have an identity. I want somebody to open their fridge up and see our brand names in there, on their shelves, at least once, twice a week, and that's where you want to be. And those big brands that I spoke about earlier on, you just need to make them. We're highly successful. Graham's Dairy is local to us here. Bars, Bell's Bakers, Walker's Shortbread. They're the brands that people have in their fridges in Scotland, and we need to be beside them.
And what steps have you taken to make sure that you're always kind of growing the brand and it's always developing?
Taking on the best brand managers. We had an exceptionally good person here in the early stages of developing our brand, Emma Loftus, and when Emma went on to other things, we've taken Claire on, who's now our brand director, and she is just knocking it out the park. She's just fantastic. New things happening. She's managing our brand support team that we have. We have a company that would help us with that, but she manages all that. I have to say that I don't have that much to do with it, if I'm honest. I nod my head when I get shown things and say that's a good idea, and it invariably is a good idea. You could wreck the brand really easily. We could do something silly, cheapen the product, cut corners. We could have very poor quality marketing people who talk us into things that are going to be bad for us. Really stupid ideas, double entendres, all the kind of things that brands seem to use, and you think, whose idea was that? That is just so crass. So, yeah, be careful. Brand's not something you want to mess about with. One of the challenges is that the brand here has my name on it, and all I need to do is, run over your foot with my car, and you take me to court, and it's in the newspapers, and all of a sudden somebody's not buying my sausages because you've got a sore foot. So I have to be careful with all that as well. It's fickle. People are funny.
If you could go back, would you say, let's remove my name from it, given that responsibility?
I don't feel the responsibility so much as the responsibility. I think it's a weakness for the business. I think I am a danger to it. Something could happen. I could say the wrong thing. I could do a Ratner. I don't know if you remember a Ratner, but where if I were to say something derogatory, and all of a sudden people take an instant dislike to my brand, the people's lives could be affected. My colleagues' work lives could be affected. So I take that seriously. But ultimately, any brand could be wrecked if you get a dummy running the business or somebody doing the wrong thing. It's happened.
And what characteristics do you think make a great leader?
Oh, goodness. The great leaders that I see, I've got different things about them that make them very good and great. Another thing is how you measure their greatness. Sometimes it's they've made such a lot of money, Others, they've got such a big team. You know, there's a bunch of things that all these different leaders are doing differently. So let's try and think about the common things that they've got. They've got to be decent. They've got to be able to recruit. They've got to get people to want to work and want to be successful. The other thing that a great leader is ultimately you're a salesperson. You're either selling yourself to your colleagues to get them to come and work with you, or you're out there promoting and selling your business to your customers. And there's a transaction happening there where you come to me for a job. I can make you happy or sad. I can make you happy and give you the job. And that's the same thing happens when you go to a customer to sell them product. You want to make them make you happy. You've got to try. So you're there. They don't know you or your product that well, but at the end of it, you want an order from them. So you've got to find a way of them saying, "I'm going to give you this order." That is, whereas in some cases they say, "I just don't like you. I'm not giving you my business." So great leaders, honesty, integrity, you know, all the things that you would teach a child. I think that a good leader has to have that. I think there are a lot of successful people out there who are not good leaders. I think they've got a decent product. They're not great leaders, some of them. And there's sometimes I don't think I'm a great leader either. You know, I'm quite happy doing my own thing. I don't particularly want to be a leader. I just happen to be the person who owns the business, and the onus is on me to look after my business and keep my colleagues on board. I'm with them because I like being with them. I wouldn't run these businesses if I absolutely hated coming here every day, because it just wouldn't work well. I think that I sometimes lack leadership. I should be more assertive, or I should be more organised, sit everyone down, talk them through what we're doing, and task them and tell them to come back and report to me. But that's not what I like doing, so I don't do it. I just watch what's happening, and then if occasionally have a sit down with someone and say, "Look, we need to move at a bit of a pace here, or we've got to change tact." But I don't want to be, I'm not their headmaster. I'm not here to mother them through their day, tell them what to do. They're really good, capable people. I hope they feel they're paid well. And in some ways, the last thing they want to be is micromanaged. So I don't know exactly what makes a good leader. I think some of it's probably easier to say what makes a bad one. Narcissistic idiots trying to bully their way through life. Some of the people, if you pick one that'd be easy to talk about, Robert Maxwell, running the newspaper business that he did, he wasn't a great leader. He probably could hold the room. He was dogmatic and a number of these things, and he managed to get a hold of some big institutional newspapers. It looks like you're a good leader. He couldn't come here and run this business. He couldn't run the corner shop. He wasn't a good leader. And there are other people I know, like my older brother's a very, very good businessman, but he's in the farming industry, and he's a really, really good at managing things. If I wanted something done, in fact, when we started the recycling business, I needed to get all the fridges collected across the whole country of Scotland every day. And he had a small haulage business. He immediately ramped that business up to 15 trucks and 40 trailers and 10 guys here and 15 guys there. And we just paid him a price per fridge, and the fridges arrived at my door the next day. I didn't know how it happened or what. And he made a lot of money doing it, and he took all the hassle away from me, completely managed it flawlessly. And he ran a great business. And he would be able to come and run anyone's business. He's a really good operator. He's a good leader. Doesn't mean to say he's the richest guy that in the country, or somebody that anybody's actually heard of. He's a better leader than I am, and yet here you're speaking to me. You should be speaking to him. But he's now a small farmer in Devon, enjoying his life. but he could show a lot of those so-called heroes a clean pair of heels.
That's very cool. It's really nice how you used the opportunity to partner with your brother as well.
Yeah.
Really nice.
Yeah. Well, when I say that, he he solved a problem for me. How was I going to get those fridges? I'm going to have to go and buy trucks and trailers, employ a transport manager, get a load of people, and then control them. No, he did that. And there weren't many businesses who could have done that as quickly as he did. And he did it.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And how do you stay motivated? And is that something that's changed throughout your career?
Yeah, I think motivation is more challenging now than it was, because I think that inevitably, I never thought I would say this, but inevitably, having a few quid in your pocket and having been round the dance floor a few times, there's a point at which you don't really want to go and get your hands as dirty as you did before. So being motivated to go and do that new opportunity, and there are new opportunities, but I'm more picky about it. So motivation is part of the problem there. But I'm highly motivated in the things that I'm still involved in. But there are times where I think, I read the business pages, or I see something, or I'm inspired by something that someone's doing, and I think, I really should be getting my nose into some of that stuff. But inspiration and the dedication to the work was never a problem. Through the fact, perhaps too much so, I played the accordion, and I've always liked Scottish music. My family were very musical, and so I got into that, and I really loved playing in a band that I had. So even, I'd be early in the morning in the butcher shop, working all day, into the laminate factory, back home, quick run round the tea table, and then out to play a dance somewhere in the evening. Literally 2 or 3 nights a week in the 90s and the 2000s. It was a busy time, but it was really enjoyable. So I had that sort of frenetic energy that was just a bit frantic from time to time, but very enjoyable. So and motivation was never a problem, providing that I had something in front of me. So if you take the musical side of life, I would perhaps have a recording to do, or maybe a big event to play at, and there was rehearsals to be done, and new things to be new music to be learned. That was a motivation, rather than grinding your way around dance halls playing at events for a few pounds. It wasn't that. It was definitely the peers as well. Being able to keep up with your peers, some great musicians who were far better than I was, but it pulled you up to their standards, or hopefully close to their standards.
Brilliant. And you still play?
I still play the instrument. I don't play very many occasions these days. I've got an odd thing in the book this year that I enjoy doing, but I don't want to just repeat the things that I've done for the last 45 years. I'm 58 years old. I've been playing in a band since I was 14, so 13, 14. So I know, and by that we played some really dodgy places, small venues with people who we shouldn't have been playing for, and we've played amazing jobs, Caledonian Ball in London, and great venues with 600 people dancing till 4 o'clock in the morning. Great experiences. So I've had a lot of fun with that. Played a lot abroad at Burn Suppers and St Andrews Night Balls in Asia and Dubai and places like that. Not highfalutin, nothing grand, but just really nice places with good guys, and like a scout camp on tour.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And you faced a lot of opposition, particularly when setting up kind of your energy plant. How do you kind of face that and try and problem solve to kind of get the goal achieved?
Well, we've had sort of 2 lots of opposition. There was a waste to energy business that we tried to get started in North Lanarkshire, a place called Carnbrough. So we found a site that I bought from a waste management company, and then I applied to build a waste to energy plant, basically a gasifier that takes the waste in, turns it to a gas, and puts the gas through an engine and creates power. And we got the permission for that after a very long, hard-fought fight. And there was a big opposition group got up against it. They just thought it was a really bad idea. You know, it's difficult. You don't sit there thinking they know nothing and I know everything, but you take a look at it in the round and say, look, I've been to see these plants. They're operated in cities and towns in Scandinavia and Central Europe really successfully. These people are just wrong. They're not getting this right. The idea of it, they didn't like the idea of it. That's understandable. They may have even been able to find some anecdotal evidence that it's not a good thing to be around. I'm not suggesting that can't be the case. But the homework I did was, this is a really good idea. It's a very good place for waste to end up at, rather than in a landfill site. So, you know, as long as you can look yourself in the mirror and say, you know, if one of those was coming into my area, I wouldn't have a problem with it, and I wouldn't have. The location it was in there was bang in the centre of Scotland, between Edinburgh and Glasgow, right off the motorway. There was a whole bunch of reasons why it was the best place for one of these things. There's one in the East Coast at Dunbar, there's one in Shetland, there's one in Dundee. They're dotted around the country, and they work very, very successfully without any problem for anyone. So as long as you're happy that you're not kidding yourself on, then you've just got to let them have their say, and don't get into a war of words. That's how I treated that. And some of the personal comments, or if you know, if somebody's been just downright rude or personal, then the way to sort them out is to win the argument, get the planning permission, build the plant. You don't have to say anything to them. You just get your head down and prove them wrong. You know, and similarly here, there was a bit of opposition in the village when we went to put up our wind turbine here. We'd put solar on the site, and we decided that solar wasn't great in the winter months, and it's a nice windy site here, so we'll put a wind turbine up. And they're Marmite. Not everyone was going to like them, and they didn't. There was a group of pretty well organised locals who got some names together and said, we're not having it. So it went through the process. Of course, I'll tell you that there was a bunch of people who said we like the idea, but the reality is all the noise was made by those who didn't like it. And that is much, much more difficult when it's in your own, like when you're meeting people in the newspaper shop in the morning. You get your two rolls in your newspaper, and somebody standing next to you has been on Facebook the night before giving it plenty. So my way to deal with that was always to avoid getting into a war of words. And then we worked very hard at including the community into the process of the turbine being built. So people came up to watch it happening. We stood at 1 o'clock in the morning as the blades came through the village, and there was I'm not going to say it was a party atmosphere, but the streets were lined with people out at between 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock in the morning to watch them coming through the village. Huge structures. It was amazing what they did, the guys bringing it in. So it's blown over. There's been a bit of negativity, but generally people have realised that, you know what, it is what it is. I always think back to when I was in the laminate business and I first got out and about in Scotland, and you would drive along to places like Preston Pans and see the towers of Cockenzie, and you would go to North Lanarkshire and see the Ravenscraig towers up, and they were imposing huge concrete structures, and people had stood and, you know, chained themselves to the railings to stop them being built when they were going up. They were an eyesore, they were a disaster. And then in my lifetime, these towers were blown up and knocked down, and people stood at the railings and wept when they came down, because they had become part of their community, part of the landscape and the view out of their window. They could see the towers at Cockenzie or Ravenscraig or Longannet or wherever it may be. It was just, I'm home when I see that when I'm driving back. And part of the Dunning scape now is that wind turbine. it is what it is. I can't say it's pretty or it's not pretty. I like it, but then I would. And it's a funny thing, and I don't want to start turning this into some sort of defence of the idea for it, but we honestly did it because there was no real way of us cleaning up our footprint without doing something like that. You know, a biomass boiler burning wood is just greenwashing. Solar was fine and is actually very good on a beautiful bright day like today, but there's so many days in the year it's not good, and it's certainly not good at night. So for us to be able to say we are off-grid, we don't buy water, our water comes from the borehole and goes back into the ground through wetlands. We want to reduce our gas and our electricity usage. So now we can say that over a year we're a net exporter of green energy. So we make 120% of what we use. So not every minute of the day. There are times when we buy more and we're making nothing because there's no wind and it's dark. But net over 12 months, we should be putting out 20% more than we buy in. And therefore people can say, if I buy from a business like that, they've put their money where their mouth is. It's expensive to buy these things. It's expensive to run them. There's risk involved. We've got insurance companies involved. There's engineers come once a month and walk up and down them and charge you a fortune to do it. So it's not plug and play and all of a sudden the money starts flowing. That's not what happens. We don't get a subsidy for it. They're not subsidised. These days have all gone. So we bought a piece of equipment that means we can generate our power from wind or solar or the sun, and we are able to say that when you buy our products, we're not importing gas and electricity from the North Sea. It's that simple. And in a way, the day that every polluter, which is what we were, the day that every polluter has a big turbine or some solar on the roof, to avoid doing that, that's a good day. And people who say it shouldn't happen, that is, to me, it's the reason that we had no problem with the solar. No one said a word about the solar going in because they couldn't see it. As soon as it was something they could see, it was a big problem, which is to me, is very, very selfish. Because I can see it, it shouldn't happen. Well, isn't it about trying to avoid buying? No, I can see it from my kitchen window, it's a problem. Well, I think that's the selfish view. And you know, that seems terribly jagged and perhaps combative when it wasn't the question you asked. But I want to see more and more companies. In fact, I think they should be legislating saying you must get turbines up, you must have solar, you need a battery at the side of your factory to be able to buffer your power and not buy it at the time when Coronation Street's on. You should be storing it up so we can level out the grid and take pressure off the grid. That should be more of that onus on businesses.
That's a tremendous vision. Speaking of vision, how do you sell your vision?
Well, I don't have one. It's absolutely I get an idea and I nurse it along until I know it's a decent one, or I think it's a decent one, and then I get going with it. And quite often I'll start something and say, this isn't a good idea, stop. No one knows about it, no one's dead, let's just can that idea. That wasn't good. I read things about businesses in the sectors that I'm in, and they're inspiring. They've businesses that are 10 times the size of ours, run by people who are really, really highly organised, and it's very inspiring, and I just sometimes wish I had that vision that they've had. But I often think it wasn't vision. I think they just got going, they kept at it, and it mushroomed and became a bit like an atomic weapon. It just had a good half-life and just grew and grew and grew. So there isn't. I don't think there is a vision. I think an awful. So if you said to me, what do I think about a lot? I think about how I can help ensure that my children and grandchildren don't end up so privileged or so mollycoddled that they don't have the fight in them to look after themselves. And I'm absolutely confident in my children, because they're in their 30s. They can look after themselves. They know how many beans make five. They know what makes a business work. They've heard it, they've seen it, they've been part of it. My children are under the age of 7. My grandchildren are under the age of 7, so it's pretty difficult to be super confident on that. So a lot of what I think about is how I can avoid mucking up other people's lives because of the success that I've had, by buying things for them that they didn't earn, smoothing the way when they should really get their fingernails dirty and go and get stuck in. That is one of the great sayings, I believe, I can't remember who said it, is thank God for adversity. The adversity is the thing that you can go back to every time and think about how you got through certain things because times were tough, rather than everything was just sitting laid out for you. That's not a good recipe. So I'm very anxious that I don't muck that up for them by being so kind and so generous and so thoughtful that I ruin their lives. That's a worry. I'm genuinely concerned about that. But it's not going to happen overnight. The good things, and I always say that, I often think, I met somebody last week who's trying to lose weight. I said, well, you didn't put it on in 1 week. Don't expect to lose it in a week. Just once you start thinking about that, then you say, well, if in a year I could get myself back to where I was, then that's it. And that's the same with getting things wrong with your kids or your grandkids, is, they're assuming it's nothing daft. You can get things wrong and start again. So I'm very anxious that I don't muck that up and start leaving them big legacies of cash that they can then go and buy supercars when they're 17 or something crazy like that. That's a mess.
That's very interesting. What do you think your kids say about you? How would they describe you?
I think I know the answer, because they do tell me, they do speak to me, and we're a very open family. They think that I've done well, and they like how I've operated. They're very open and loving kind of people. We all are towards each other. So I think it can be difficult with having a parent that's the local boy done good, So I wasn't them. I didn't come from a family where Dad had done the things that I've done. He'd been successful in his own way, but he was that single. He was a farmer, and that's what he did, and he did it well. But he hadn't had the financial success that has come my way. I'm not going to be stupidly modest about that. It just has gone better for me, and so consequentially, the children have been brought up in a different way. My wife was a much more present mum than mine. My mother was. My mother was a nursing sister working nights in the hospitals, sleeping and working, trying to bring kids up and doing the wash, doing all the things. It was super hard work. So we were just much more free and easy, whereas our kids have been pretty much at our side for a lot of their youth. So what do they say? Yeah, I think they're pleased that their dad's done well. They understand too that they've got to put a shift in and do that, and they want to do that. I don't have to say, now come on, you can't. They're not messers. They're people who want to do well in their own right, and they don't want to be living in my shadow, and they never come saying, give me some money. So that's massively to their credit. It's difficult not giving them it though. That's the big challenge, is when you think I could go in there and paper over the cracks or smooth that out for you, but you know they've not got their hands out, and that's important. I think it's an important thing.
That's very interesting. Very cool. What does success look like to you?
What does it look like? Well, I view success as being something coming together, a plan that you put together works. If I think of my retail butcher shops, success for me is customers meeting me in the street saying, I was in your shop, it was great, lovely and clean, the staff were so friendly and helpful, and the food was good. That's success to me. I feel that's a success. It's not, last year we had £100 and this year we have £110. But conversely, if it was £100 last year and it's £5 now, I suppose that's a failure. But that I'm not measuring my success over the next 10 years on what my bank balance does. It's definitely not that. It would be the business is standing, the being able to pay people more, having more talent in the business, new things happening out with some of the core businesses. That for me would be one. We've recently finished a big construction project for one of the big drinks companies where we found a big site, and through collaborating with some really good talented people, we delivered a £70 million project to them in 2 years, a year earlier than it would have been. That was a success. It was financially rewarding. The customer was very happy with it. There were no cross words, there were no hair pulling. Everybody got paid. You know, we acted the way that we would like people to treat us, so we made sure that we dealt with our contractors in that way. And when we were liaising with the customer, we made sure that we were deferential and gave them the good old-fashioned customer service. That was a success. That's you know, for me. Had it been something like we made all the money that we thought we were going to make on it, but it was a riot, we all fell out, but we won the day because our lawyers were tougher than their lawyers, that's not a success. I would not have come out of that feeling good. I wouldn't have liked it if we lost money either. That would have been, even though we were pals, you know, we do these things to move forward financially, and that gives you the independence to say no to things. It gives you the ability to. So that success for me has been that really, really nice feeling of not having to do something. So doing things that we want to do. Being able to say, somebody comes forward that in years gone by I would have said, well, we'll have to take that business, we'll have to do it. No, they're not for us. There's an interesting, the guy who sold me the wind turbine was a very clever man. Wim Robertson's his name, from Holland. And he said, you get the customers you deserve, Simon. I thought, that's really good, I like that. And it's true. There's been a lot of customers I've had over the years that were the wrong ones for us. I shouldn't have been serving them. They were only out to take what they could get from you. So you sometimes get what you deserve because you're too hungry. You're not asking the right questions. So that's one that will sit with me for a while. I'll remember that. You get the customers you deserve.
That's brilliant advice.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Would you say entrepreneurs are born or made?
I don't think anybody can be successful in different arenas unless that's the way they are. So I think they're the cleverest guys in my class at school. I was a middling student. I was 65, 70% man. I was never 90% in physics or anything. I was a good 60 to 70% type guy. But I got things out of my schooling life that I wanted. I needed to get the stuff that you need to go to school for, and I wanted to have a bit of fun at school and get out of school, get home and do things on the farm or go and work in the butcher shop. It was part of my week. It wasn't my whole thing. So my point there relative to your question is that there were the 95% boys and girls in the class, and not all of them have done well. In fact, a few of them have done really badly. And it's not because they weren't clever, able people, but they just haven't been entrepreneurial. So they've ended up in a job that's been a rut for them, and things haven't gone well. You will get people who were in the 20-30%, people who just were absolutely not applying themselves at school, or perhaps in those days were dyslexic or dyspraxic or something, and were deemed to be not worth the trouble, and have done amazingly well. We had our school reunion 6 months ago, 100 people from our year at the secondary school, and you look round the room and some pretty hairy characters at school have done super well, really, really well. Born entrepreneurs they were. Just, buying property, buying and selling businesses, got themselves into situations, went abroad, did different things, and have done really, really well. So I think they're born. But I don't want it to sound like, oh well, I don't think I'm one, so that means it's never going to happen for me. Well, stop. Just start acting like one, and you will be one. You think about things, and don't think that entrepreneurs are guys who just do the deal and go and do something else. To be an entrepreneur means you must be doing 50 things at the same time. No, you can be a very good entrepreneur in one trade. You just happen to be, have a fan of things that you're doing within that sphere of house building. There'll be some great entrepreneurs and all they do is build houses. But equally, there are some really, really good big businesses out there run by people who are absolutely not entrepreneurial. They're just very good managers. They're detailed, organised people. And so you can't put this entrepreneur into some pigeonhole that is a bit of a fly by the seat of his pants merchant, long hair, doesn't bother about things, wanders in the morning, sort of sprinkles some magic dust on top of people, and it all goes well. That's total BS. But equally, this guy or person with massive attention to detail, micromanaging everything doesn't make them entrepreneurial. And so I think that the common thing, if you picked 50 entrepreneurs, I think there'll be commonality there. They were always like that. You pick them, and the obvious ones that have done super well that you see on the television, they have got something common going on. The single-mindedness, the lack of need for validation from other people. Probably thing I miss the most is that I've always been a bit of because I was so afraid of losing my money and wasn't really in the business, wasn't keen to borrow money from people. I was always a bit tight with my cash. And so what I see with some of those guys who've done well on a different level from me is that they have a much more carefree attitude towards money. If I lose it, I lose it. I've never felt like that. I've been saying, no, I'm not bursting my gut every day here to lose the cash. I'll go out and fight you in the car park for £5. I'll give you 100 quid if you're stuck. But if you try and take a fiver off me outside, I'm not having that. And these guys were much more free and easy. They seem to be easier with that, so that's something that I've not been easy with. But I don't think you can take people into an entrepreneur school and say, start doing this, be this, and you'll be an entrepreneur. Against me having just said, start acting like one, but you've got to, it kind of needs to come from you. You can't look it up and go to rule 15 in the book and say, right, today I'm going to act like this. You just have to find it in yourself. There's probably a lot of people. I've got one of the most successful people I know personally really well, worked in a business for 25 years and to a high level, to chief exec level, and he was running the business for the shareholders. And he managed to buy the business from the shareholders for, a cracking price because they fell out of love with it. And he took it to a level that was unbeknown. He just completely knocked it out of the park, took it out to thousands of people in the business, making tens of millions of pounds, and he sold it for a figure that you can't imagine. And he was totally entrepreneurial. He hadn't looked like it when he was doing the manager's job or the chief exec's job, but when he got into the driving seat himself, he got himself on a plane to different countries and saw different customers, got involved in different aspects of the industry, and knocked it out of the park. He was a born entrepreneur. He just hadn't looked like it for a long time.
Wow. Mm-hmm. What would be the one piece of advice that you would pass on to young entrepreneurs that are maybe kind of struggling with, like, how do I get out of this, or looking to kind of find their way?
Yeah, I mean, I can only tell you what I did, and that was that I got good at something. And then when you get good at something, you're doing the knitting, you're paying the wages, you're able to take home enough money to live, then sort of grow that to a point where you can then start looking left or right. But I see so many young guys telling me, oh, I'm going to start this up, and as soon as it gets good and going, I'm going to change and do 3 other things at the same time. I'm going to buy property and buy flats and renovate them, and I'm going to buy a chip shop, and then you think, look, you haven't washed a dish yet, you haven't done anything. Get good at something, get to know it, and make some mistakes, and hire the wrong people, have to fire the wrong people, say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, whatever it is that you need to do to earn your stripes, but learn from that. And then start seeing another opportunity. Don't get over leveraged. Don't be afraid of debt. If you have a casual approach to cash, getting back to the kids, it's one thing that I've instilled into them is don't be casual with money, because it's all right saying when you've got it, easy come, chuck it around a bit, but when it's not there, your options are very limited when you don't have money. So many young people now seem to be super casual about money. It seems easy, and that's not the case in business, because you can very quickly get into the wrong place and your lenders start to control you, whoever that may be. So my advice is pay your bills on time, collect your cash, work hard, get to know your trade, get to know what's going on in detail. Don't be that swashbuckler who thinks, I don't need to know all the detail. Yes, you do. Get to know the detail, and then start looking out with that. And also too, remember, you don't have to be doing 5 different sectors, working in 5 different sectors to be classed as being entrepreneurial. And why do you need to be called an entrepreneur anyway? Well, you want to be as successful. Don't worry about getting a badge and people talking about you at the pub or the golf club saying he's an entrepreneur. And half them couldn't spell it. It's just become that thing now. Even people, what's really, really nauseating is people introduce themselves and say, I'm an entrepreneur. I mean, God forbid. It's nauseating. So, no, just be humble. Put a shift in, make some money, go home and repeat.
Thank you. I like that. Very good. How do you go about deciding when it's time to sell a business?
Well, I have sold a few businesses. I sold the recycling business, then we bought it back, and then we sold it again. I sold the laminate businesses. Well, for me, it's never been when they were struggling. It's never been when I think this is really hellish, I'm not making the money I should be making, let's get out. No, you're never going to get great value for that. There maybe are times when you should do it at that point because you're actually going to dig a hole and it's going to be worse. I haven't had that problem. The time to sell is when it's at 12 o'clock. when everything you've been trying to do comes together, the brands are working well, cash is coming in, you've not got bad debts, you've got a great team, you've got succession organised. In other words, if somebody was looking at your business, they would say, God, that's good. They're really working well, doing a great job. The other thing is, I would say for me, I sold the businesses when we were the business that our competitors would have wanted to get rid of. Each time you became an absolute thorn in the side of all your competitors. They were all talking about what you were doing. Your colleagues, the guys that I had running these businesses and working with me, could have gone into any industry and been successful and brilliant. They were exceptional. So that was what you had. You had the assets, you had the goodwill, which is the right to make money, or the ability to make money is your goodwill. That's that intangible piece. And then you had the people. Yeah. So when you've got all that, then you say, right, okay, what am I going to get in terms of growth here going forward? Do I see it as getting this next push up onto the next level? That's going to mean either a big investment, a lot of time, or a lot of risk. Or it might just not happen. So don't fancy that. So we'll grind our way through here. We've kind of squeezed the pips out of this, and what the money we're making now per year is kind of what we're going to make going forward, whereas previously it had been really growing. So we'd hit a bit of a flat spot. So that to me would be starting to say, right, okay. Then I would be thinking about succession. If I really feel exposed to one or two people, I'd be thinking, if anything happened to him or her, we'd be in a poor state, and I would be back in the trenches doing their job, and I don't want to do it. So that would be a tick, right? Okay, I need to think about this. The other thing would be maybe a knock on the door. Some conglomerate or some business locally has said, we'd like to buy you. Oh, right, okay, well, that's nice. I'm not saying we're for sale, but at least we can see there's an interest there. Then the other thing is, you think, well, who should buy us? And why should they buy us? And if you know who they are and why they should do it, then they'll probably believe you when you tell them. And that's what happened in each case. We found the buyers and said to them, we'd be the absolute spot on purchase for you. You're 20 times bigger than us. You're not in our sector. Oh, sorry, you're not in doing exactly what we do, but we're in the same sector. For 8 times our profit, you could own our business, which would give you a 12% return on your money. What's not to like about that? And that's what happened. We sold the recycling business to Viridor for a big chunky number in 2008. They ran it, and then we bought it back from the people that bought their business in 2020, and subsequently we've sold that again. The laminate business, we ran that for 25 years. Michael Elwin was doing a brilliant job. He and I were both at the stage where we thought, there's not much more we can squeeze out of this. This is going gangbusters. We're making £5 million a year, and so there were three divisions to it. We sold 2 to an American buyer who were the largest in the world at what we did, and we sold the other one to a company who are also American, but they're from West Hollywood, North Hollywood, which is an unusual place to be as big as they were. The largest washroom cubicle manufacturer in the world, called Bobrick, and they were a really nice family-owned business by Mark and his son Matt. And what we did was we decided that the first 2 businesses were bought, and we were left with the third one, which was standalone in its own way, but part of the Shore Laminates group. And I picked up the phone to the office at Bobrick in North Hollywood and asked for the name of the managing director, whose name was Ton Ho. He was a a Japanese national. And I phoned back and asked for Ton Ho, and said it's Simon Howie from Thrislington Cubicles, which was the division of Shore Laminates. And he immediately came on the phone, and within 5 minutes he said to me, "We've been watching your business. We will come over to London next Tuesday and meet you in London." And they came over on the Tuesday and they bought the business. And I literally called them from the side of the road in my car, and within 5 minutes, as I said, of speaking to him, he said, "We've been tracking 10 businesses in the world that we would like to own, and yours is in the top 3. I said, "You're not a great negotiator." And he laughed. And he came across, and we had a very amiable, affable deal. We got a decent price, and he got a good business. And it's still going good today. So you have to put yourself in the position of, like, who should own us? They should own us. And unless you're deluding yourself, then when you speak to them, they're going to get it, because they're smart people. They're going to say, "Yeah, well, if it's not too expensive, we will buy you. They've got stacks." You check them out. They've got stacks of cash, loads of heritage, and they're ambitious, and they do what we do. So why wouldn't they buy you? But a lot of people say, "Nah, I'm going to sell my business." Well, anybody would be mad to buy your business for a decent sum. You need to keep it and work it. People come to me all the time and say, "I'd like to sell out." No, you're just sick of it. It's not that your business is in a position to be sold. You're just done. So you need to find a way of getting people into your business, because you're going to give the business away. A lot of the time, I could have sold the laminate business in 2006, 2005, and I got a fraction for it compared to what we ended up getting. But I was getting sick of it by that time. The recycling business was going gangbusters, butchery business was growing, and I was getting a bit tired of the laminate business. And then Michael Elwyn came in, and he basically said, "Leave me to it. I'll get on with it." So we worked much more closely on a desktop basis, and he did all the heavy lifting. But had I sold it a few years earlier, it would have been out of petulance or boredom or laziness. It wasn't the right time to have sold it, and I wouldn't have got the right price for it, because anyone coming to see it would have said, "It's not ready to be sold. We're buying something we're going to have to fix." Whereas when we sold in 2018, there was nothing to fix. The biggest problem they would have is avoiding it going backwards. So it was quite clearly the right time to sell, and we're glad we did sell. Obviously, too, unbeknown to us and anyone else, COVID came along in 2020, and that was a hellish time for the construction industry. So we weren't disappointed that we were trying to keep that together. We felt sorry for the people who were, but they've come out of it well. It's all come back again, but it was a trying time for the construction industry.
Yeah. Wow, there's so much in that. Thank you. It's just, wow. Great. What would you say that you're most proud of?
I should be saying to you, I'm not a proud person, because pride's an odd thing to be sort of standing with your chest out, congratulating yourself for what you've done. Well, I mean, again, too, I should say my family, my kids are what I'm most proud of, but that's not what today is about, and nothing gets close to them in any respect, so I'm not going to go down that road. That should go without saying. I think the diversity of the group, the things that we do, I think that all across the things that we're involved with, we make a fist of it. We do a good job. Our customers seem to not be fighting with us. They seem to come back, and we get to serve them more than once. That's a sign that you're not exploiting them or doing something you shouldn't be doing. That makes me happy. I probably struggle from the fact that one of my predisposed things is that I don't take a lot of pride and pleasure out of things, because I've always felt that it's a slippery slope, and I don't consciously not take pride and pleasure out of it. It's not like I won't be happy. No, it isn't that. It's the fact is that I am that person who, if he won the League Cup on Saturday, would be worried about the game with Tranmere Rovers on the Thursday. You know, I would be driving home from the cup winning event thinking about the Thursday. It's just, it's an odd way, and it's not always the most pleasurable, but I just don't take any of these wins. You know, they've very kindly handed gongs to me over the years, and I wouldn't even take my family along to the award ceremony on the night because A, I may not have won the gong, or B, I just didn't think that we should all go along and stand and hold hands and, you know, raise the trophy up in the air. It's just not the way I'm made. And you know, I actually love the fact that my kids get excited about things. It's such a good thing to have that excitement about something new coming in, or something new happening, or going somewhere. And I just don't get myself. And maybe it's a coping mechanism with not having to worry about failure, because you haven't set yourself up for the win. Or when you do become successful, you're just ready for the next smack in the chops. So you just don't get yourself to the point where you're running around waving your fist in the air. That's not for me. So I'm happiest, I'll use the expression, proudest of the fact that the businesses are up there with their peers, as good as any of the other people that are in our trade. And a good day would be the best, and a bad day we're still okay. That's the way I would put it, and that's good news for me. You know, if you come to the farm, the way that we look after the animals, the way that we look after our fences and our agronomy in the ground, and the equipment that we have, the way that the guys dress, the way we speak to each other, it's all done in the way that you'd want it to be if you were discerning. And that's important. You know, yeah, just do things well. That's the best part of it. But I also know people who are exceptional in certain areas, but they're held back by the pursuit of perfection. That is a scourge. That perfection thing it just gets in the way of getting things done half the time. They're so busy trying to get things absolutely perfect that they just don't get the volume done. They're just busy being perfect, and I'm not, definitely not. You know, even doing something like that'll do, move on, come on, next thing, get things done, get round here, and in a day you feel like I've covered a lot of ground, but I didn't, you know, obsess about the fact that my desk isn't cleared and I haven't answered everything, or I haven't, you know, my car's dirty. You know, I'm not going to die in a ditch over some of these things, and so many people do.
Well, that's good advice. Yeah, well, very good. What would it take for you to stop and walk away?
Serious health issue.
So you've got no plans to be like, at this age, that'll be me?
No chance. No. That would probably bring on a serious health issue. It's no. I mean, I don't work. I play. You know, I come to work every day. That to me is it's fun and it's good. And the bad days, you know that there's the expression, there's a summer after every winter. And, you know, if you have a couple of bad days, it's amazing how just then day 3 and 4 are absolutely fine for whatever reason. No, it would I mean, you know, if we go on vacation, the idea that you're permanently on break, it's not real. I don't know many people that are super happy with that. There are some folk who can do it. You know, guys who love the golf course, or people who love hiking and walking, or just sitting drinking coffee, muddling about, reading the newspapers. I can do that on a Sunday morning, really well. But I couldn't do it every day of the week. In fact, I get annoyed if I don't get to do it on a Sunday morning. You know, that's what I want to do. And part of being busy is that feeling of not having to be busy. But if all you had to do was nothing, then that would be torture. And I think that you hear people saying these things and you think, they're just saying that. They would love to be, you know, mucking about, cleaning their car and sitting in the garden. But nah, it'd be a long day. In fact, if you meet old people, one thing they struggle with is that very thing, is loneliness, the lack of being needed, not having enough, responsibility. I had a very, very close friend who was 30 years older than me, a great pal, and he said, I just need to be organising things. I need to be up, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be picking the grandkids up and 3 of them in different places, or I could be helping the village hall get renovated, or buying and selling 2 houses on his small estate. He just had to be doing something, and I can totally understand that. So that's a worry for you become less relevant. And if I didn't have the businesses, it would be very difficult to stay busy. You'd end up, because you wouldn't get the same buzz out of just hobbies. I don't think you would get the same buzz out of that. There are things you do to take your mind off work.
Is legacy important to you?
No, it's not. Absolutely not important to me. I'm not sure that I think there are people who have left a legacy. Some of them, it's been financial legacies. They've done really well and left stacks of cash, and they've maybe left it in a trust, and it's been good for education for children, and that's a great legacy. But it's money, and it's not what they did during their life that they've left behind. It's the cash, right? So there's that part of a legacy that we'll call it that. I know of people who have 50 obvious kind of people who have done amazing things in the last 200 years. You can think of them yourself, these business titans who supposedly left a legacy. You never hear people speaking about them. You can talk about them. We could consciously think about them now and bring their names up, but you wouldn't normally talk about them. You may think about them, but they haven't actually left anything that's of any good to us today, a lot of the time. I think that maybe, in fact, not maybe, definitely, some of the scientists, you take your Marie Curies, that's a legacy. Now that's a real legacy. Somebody who did something that completely changed life as we know it. I think that what I've done, I'm a businessman. I'm somebody who had nothing in his pocket, who was saying, I'm not going to scrape my way through life. I'm going to try and find the best way I can to make some cash, and then make 2 and 2, make 4, makes 8, makes 16, makes 32, and try and get that to mushroom. And that's, to date, touching wood, that's what's happened. It's nothing like the amount of money that this one over here or this one over there's made, but that doesn't matter, because it's only really the first part that really matters to anyone. The next bit above that is just a number. You don't use it ever. You never use it, because it's cushion, it's there, it's for a rainy day, or it's for the next generation, or it's for the next deal. But this is the part that you live on, and that, as long as that's always there, then you can live. You can eat the one dinner that you need, you can drive a decent car, go on a decent holiday, and look out for your family. So as long as that's cushioned by the piece above, then life's good. And so legacy for me is something I don't think about. I'm not trying to leave something that somebody in 50 years will be talking about, or that, the brand Simon Howie Butchers must continue. That must go on. No chance. I don't think like that. I'm very happy that it does. And sometimes it concerns me that it does, because if it got into the wrong hands by the wrong people, it could be something that's used for all the wrong things. And I wouldn't want that. I don't want somebody selling pet food with the name Simon Howie on it. And who knows what could happen if it gets into other hands. So the legacy side of it isn't one. The other thing that I'm crystal clear about in my mind is that this is fleeting. I'm here, I've had a nice life so far, I've got a great relationship with my family and my friends, and then it'll be done. it'll be gone. And then, you know, in another 50 years, 80 years time, people won't remember me, they won't talk about me, you, nor anyone else, particularly. And that's it. So I have a clear view in my mind that I don't sit congratulating myself and think about the journey, think about where I was and what I did, and oh, that was tough. My God, but it was tough. And we managed it when others didn't. No, it's fleeting. It's fleeting. It'll just be over. So I try to enjoy what I've got and keep it in perspective. I don't buddy up with people who've all done well and we all congratulate ourselves and talk about how we've done better than anyone else, because that's not fun at all. I don't take any pleasure out of that. And the older I get, the more I'm enjoying the simpler things that I thought when I was in my 20s, I thought if I get to a certain level in my business and my career, it'll just all be available to me, and I'll just go and do a whole bunch of things that at that time I thought would be amazing, and I wouldn't thank you for them now. You know, I wouldn't want to go and do a lot of those things. You know, world travel doesn't particularly excite me. I go and I come home, and I'm always glad to be home. So, no, I don't have any aspirations to leave a legacy other than be decent to the people that are around me now. Have a good life, enjoy it, and that's not as easy as you may think, because as things get better, and that's terribly spoilt to say something like that, but you spend a lot of your time watching over what's been done. So sometimes it'd be. I remember the freedom of being 21 and having a small shop in the village, closing on a Wednesday and a Sunday, and when I shut that door on a Tuesday night, I had a day off and I just mulled about and did other things. Whereas now, you never quite switched off, really, apart from a Sunday morning.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Simon. Really been so valuable hearing your kind of stories and all the lessons. There's just so much in that, so thank you.
No, it's a pleasure. Nice to meet you.
Thank you for joining us on Legacy Conversations. I hope you've enjoyed it and found it beneficial. I'm looking forward to the next one.